And Sarah, one of the things we want to take a look at is sector by sector what we're looking at, particularly as we go into tech next week, because in the projections we'll put up a chart that basically shows, and this combines actuals so far, but with what's projected, the tech is next to the bottom of the list about what we're expecting.
Well, last year you had some very good sales in tech, and I think that there were some concerns around inventories, around inventory corrections, and you had some weakness in the first quarter, and I think that people expect that to extend into the second quarter and start to get better in the second half of the year. Although some of the parts of those calendars that people had been talking about, that the back half was going to be strong and the first half was going to be weak, may not be playing out quite the way that people expected. So then the question is, how do we look in the back half of the year? But I think that's part of the reason that tech looks like it's going to be weaker.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because we come inside the Bloomberg here. This really shows what Sarah's talking about. It's EA Go. That a vertical line is where we are right now. So the top line is average sales growth, and the bottom is average earnings growth. So in theory, this looks like to be the trough, and then things get better. So you think we have a lot more revisions to go downward?
Well, so when the first quarter was over, I think everybody was like, great, the first quarter's out of the way. And then it started to look like, well, maybe that's going to take a little bit longer, so maybe the second quarter is going to be the trough. And for this technology stocks, to a great degree, especially the ones like the semiconductors, people tend to look for when that trough is happening and try to get in when that's happening or just before it. So you saw the semiconductors start to rally in the second quarter, also on the back of some of the letting go of the Huawei issue and some of the other things that were going on. There's a lot of things that are moving in tech right now. So I think that if it looks like this is really the end, and when people start talking about earnings, they say, you know what, we think that we've gotten through all of this inventory and everything else. I think that's going to be beneficial for them.
Does that mean as we go into next week, you're going to be looking at what they say in their earnings call every bit as much or even more than what they actually report for second quarter?
I think that is the story for the second quarter, because everyone is looking to see what's going to happen next. Because originally, like I said, the beginning of this year, the earnings were not supposed to be so good. First quarter was actually surprisingly better than people expected. And I think that everyone's going to be looking to say what's happening now, because with the trade deal not getting done in the second quarter, I think that may also affect how people see the back half of the year.
So is the better strategy is to sort of ignore the next 6 months, or do you want to play volatility? Like, if we learned anything like we saw with Netflix, if you played some volatility into earnings, you probably made a nice buck.
Well, you can't really ignore the 6 months because we have to stay invested through them, right? So, I'm sort of surprised, we're going to go into earnings later, but I'm sort of surprised that Boeing is dealing as well as it has been. The stock has been reacting as well as it has been to all the problems that they've been having. But I think that if people think that most of this is temporary, or that we can get through the next 6 months, and or that a trade deal is coming, or that it's not going to make things worse, then I think that people are willing to give them a pass and say, okay, so what does it look like even further forward? But if it looks like trade gets even messier, if it looks like some of these other issues that are problematic, which is, goes to oil, then the question is, okay, so what happens then, and globally what happens to the economy? And I think that that's still a question that's up in the air.